Hi there, and welcome back to the Declutter Homemaker, where we make space for what matters by letting go of what doesn't. I've always loved the kind of habits that quietly make life feel easier. Not flashy, not complicated, just simple shifts that help our homes breathe again, one corner at a time. I used to think I had to do more, clean harder, organize better, buy new containers, start fresh every weekend. But the truth is, what I needed was less. Less pressure, less stuff. Less of that draining loop where everything resets but nothing really changes. And the more I started letting go, the more time and peace I got back for myself, for my family, and for the things I actually care about. So today I'm sharing 10 kinds of items I regularly declutter, not because I'm chasing perfection, but because removing them always makes life lighter. And the first one, it used to make my kitchen feel like a display shelf of things no one ever touched. Let's get into it. Let's start with something that hides behind good intentions, the things we keep because they were expensive. Have you ever kept something just because it felt too expensive to throw away even though you never actually use it? Maybe it's a gadget you bought in a wave of motivation, or a nice item gifted to you that you feel too guilty to pass on. It just sits there, taking up space while the guilt keeps you from making a decision. Here's the shift that helped me. Instead of asking, "Did I pay a lot for this?" I started asking, "Is this adding value to my life now?" Because if the answer is no, no matter how much it cost, it's not an investment anymore, it's a burden. For example, I had a high-end juicer I bought during my health reset phase. It looked beautiful on the counter, and then sat untouched for nearly 2 years. Every time I saw it, I felt guilty for not using it, for spending that much, for failing the version of me who bought it. But one day, I realized keeping it wasn't helping me become that version, it was just reminding me that I wasn't. So I donated it to a community center kitchen. They actually use it, and I got my counter space and my peace of mind back. We're not meant to be storage units for our past purchases. You're allowed to release something even if it once cost you a lot. Because the longer it sits unused, the more it quietly costs you now in space, in energy, in ease. And once you let go of that first heavy item, something interesting happens. You start noticing other things that have been weighing you down too. And once you let go of that first heavy item, something interesting happens. You start noticing other things that have been weighing you down too. And it's not just about what you feel. It's also about what you see. Tomorrow, I'll walk you through the kind of hidden clutter that's making your home feel busier, messier, or even cheaper than it really is. You might not even realize how much these small details are shaping the way your space feels until you remove them. And once you do, the shift is immediate. Come back for that one. I think it'll change the way you look at your home. Let's talk about those next. Next, let's move into something that's surprisingly hard to let go of, even when we know we've moved past it. There was a time when I thought that if something had memories, I needed to keep it forever, especially if it belonged to my kids. A toy they once loved, a backpack from their first year of school, a little chair they've clearly outgrown, but somehow I hadn't let myself notice. But here's the truth, we can outgrow things emotionally too. And just because something was once part of a beautiful season doesn't mean it belongs in the current one. What helped me was shifting from asking, "Do I remember this?" to, "Are we still using this?" Because I realized I wasn't keeping the item for my child, I was keeping it for the version of me who once needed it. And that's okay. But it doesn't mean it has to stay. For instance, my daughter used to have a rolling craft caddy with markers and notepads. It traveled with us on every road trip. It was her favorite thing when she was 5. But she's 10 now, and it's been sitting untouched in the closet for a year. When I asked her if she still wanted it, she looked at me and said, "Oh, I forgot about that." And in that moment, I realized I was the only one holding on. Letting go of outgrown things isn't about erasing memories. It's about giving our current lives the space they need to grow. Because clutter from the past can crowd out the present, and we deserve to live in this season fully. Now that we've looked at what no longer fits our life stage, let's talk about the kind of stuff we tend to collect even when we already have more than enough. Now, let's talk about the clutter that feels harmless until it multiplies behind closed drawers. There was a time when I thought organizing meant just finding a spot for everything. But I didn't question why I had 3 can openers, or 5 nearly identical water bottles. If it fit in a drawer, I kept it. No harm, right? But here's the thing. Duplicates are quiet clutter. They don't scream for attention, but they slowly make it harder to find what you do need. They crowd your space and your routines without you even noticing. This shift helped me. Instead of asking, do I have space for this? I started asking, do I already have something that does this job? Because more often than not, I did and it worked just fine. For example, I once bought a new set of measuring spoons because they were cute and on sale. I told myself I'd use them for baking days. But guess what? I always reached for the same old set I liked best. The extras just tangled up in the drawer, making it harder to grab the one I actually used. So now, whenever I'm decluttering, I open one drawer at a time and look for the duplicates, things that snuck in when I wasn't paying attention. And I remind myself I only need one can opener that works. One pair of scissors I trust. One bag that actually fits my routine. Letting go of extras doesn't mean living without it. It means living with just enough to make life smoother. And speaking of smoother, let's move into the next kind of clutter that often creates little moments of friction all over the house. Next up, let's talk about the items that still work, but only if you're willing to tolerate a little daily annoyance. There was a time when I thought that as long as something wasn't broken, I had no reason to replace it. But over time, I noticed something. I was building up quiet resentment toward the things I used every day. The zipper that always stuck, the pan that always burned one side, the scissors that only cut halfway, but I still reached for them again and again. Eventually I realized if I'm constantly adjusting, fixing, or fighting with something just to make it work, it's no longer serving me, it's slowing me down. One example, I had a kitchen spatula that had a loose handle. It wobbled every time I flipped anything. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal because it made cooking feel just a bit more chaotic. One day I finally tossed it and used the backup I'd been ignoring. It was sturdier, simpler, and made dinner prep feel smoother immediately. When you're a woman juggling 1,000 moving parts, meals work kids your own sanity, these small annoyances add up. They steal energy you didn't have to spare in the first place. So if there's an item in your home that makes you roll your eyes every time you use it, ask yourself honestly, is it really worth the daily friction? Let's move now to another kind of hidden clutter, the things that take up mental space, even if they look tidy from the outside. Now let's shift into a category that doesn't take up much physical space, but quietly clutters your mind. There was a time when I believed every book I bought was an investment in my growth. Every magazine, every printed article, every notebook filled with ideas. For later, they all felt important. But slowly those stacks turned into pressure. I wasn't reading them. I was just carrying them room to room, shelf to shelf. Here's the question that changed everything for me. If I hadn't already owned this, would I choose to keep it today? That helped me see clearly which books still inspired me and which ones were just guilt in hardcover. I had a shelf of parenting books I hadn't touched in years, not because they were bad, but because they didn't fit where I was in life anymore. I donated them to a local support center and felt immediate relief. Same with paper. I kept a binder of recipes I printed off over a decade ago, thinking someday I'd cook through them. But truthfully, I used the same 5 recipes on repeat. The binder wasn't helping, it was nagging me. You don't have to read every book you started. You don't have to hold on to every note you've ever taken. Letting go of the words you've outgrown is not failure, it's clarity. And when you clear that shelf, you might just find space for something you do want to read. Or for nothing at all. Imagine that. Now let's talk about a category of clutter that's often not even yours, but somehow you're the one managing it. Let's move on to the kind of clutter that's tricky, not because it's big or hard to store, but because it's not even really yours. There was a time when I thought being a good mom or good partner meant taking care of everyone's stuff. So I kept the random cords my husband said he might need, the toy pieces my kids no longer played with, and the shoes no one had worn since last summer, just in case. I wasn't the one using them, but I was the one looking at them every day. Eventually, I realized I was carrying the mental load for things that weren't mine to manage. And that weight, it shows up in ways you don't always notice, like irritation, decision fatigue, and the creeping resentment of being the only one who seems to care where things go. So here's the shift: when I find something that's not mine, I don't quietly store it just in case. I ask, out loud, kindly but clearly, do you want to keep this? Or sometimes even better, can we let this go? For example, my son had 3 pairs of soccer cleats in the mudroom. One still fit, one didn't, and one had a broken lace and smelled like regret. I asked him directly, and surprise, he only wanted to keep the good pair. The rest, gone. And that corner, peaceful again. You don't have to be the manager of every object in your home, especially not the ones no one else even remembers they own. Up next, let's talk about something that enters your home with excitement, but quietly turns into clutter when the novelty wears off. Now let's look at the items that arrived with so much excitement but quickly faded into just more stuff. There was a time when I believed every new activity kit, craft box, or toy with cool packaging would unlock hours of joy for my kids, and sometimes they did for a day. But then those items sat in corners, missing pieces, half-used, or simply untouched. Still, I kept them, because I remembered that one good afternoon. But here's what I've learned: just because something started fun doesn't mean it needs to stay forever, especially if no one's touching it anymore. One example, my daughter once got a DIY slime making kit with glitter scents, all the works. She used it the first weekend, made a few batches, and then forgot about it. Weeks went by, then months. I kept stepping over the box in the closet until I finally asked her, "Do you want to do more of this?" She shrugged and said, "Nah, I'm kind of over it." That was all I needed. Now I keep a small phase-out basket for things like this, toys or projects that have clearly lost their appeal. Every few weeks I do a soft check-in with the kids. Still into this? If not, we thank it and we let it go. Because your home shouldn't feel like a museum of half-finished hobbies. It should reflect what your family enjoys right now. Speaking of things that are no longer working, let's talk about items that are physically broken but emotionally hard to part with. Let's talk about the guilt pile, the things that are broken, unused, and waiting for someday. There was a time when I truly believed I'd fix everything. The broken lamp, the toy with one wheel missing, the zipper that just needs a little attention. I'd tuck these items aside, feeling responsible and maybe even a little virtuous, like I was being thrifty. But months would pass, sometimes years, and that pile of to-fix items just became a silent reminder of all the things I hadn't gotten around to. Here's what helped: I gave every broken item a deadline. If I couldn't realistically fix or repurpose it within the next 10 days, it had to go either into the trash, recycling, or offered to someone who could fix it and would actually use it. For example, we had an old desk fan that broke during a heat wave. I saved it thinking maybe my husband could repair the motor. That was 2 summers ago. When I finally asked him, he admitted he'd forgotten about it and had no interest in fixing it. Out it went, and just like that, I freed up space both in the house and in my mind. We often keep broken things not because they're valuable, but because we feel like we should do something with them. But sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is make a clear decision and move on. Let's move now to another emotionally tricky category: the gifts we never asked for and the quiet pressure they leave behind. Now let's talk about the clutter that comes wrapped in good intentions, the things you never picked but still feel too guilty to let go of. There was a time when I thought letting go of a gift meant disrespecting the person who gave it. I kept candles I'd never light, scarves I'd never wear, decorative pieces that didn't match my home, all because someone once handed them to me with love. But over time, I realized something important. The gift was given, the gesture was received, and that moment has already done its job. You don't owe a lifetime of shelf space to something just because it came with a bow. One example, a family friend once gave us a decorative bowl ceramic floral and completely not my style. I put it on a shelf because I didn't know what else to do. For years, I dusted around it, moved it during deep cleanse, and felt low-key annoyed every time I saw it. Eventually, I asked myself, would I keep this if no one knew I had it? The answer was no. So I donated it and felt zero regret. Here's the shift: separate the object from the emotion. You can appreciate the thought behind a gift without keeping the physical item forever. And chances are the person who gave it never meant for it to become a weight on your shoulders. Once you release the pressure to keep what's not truly yours, you create more room for the things that actually reflect you, your taste, your needs, your energy, your needs. And sometimes what takes up space isn't just what we've received, it's what we bought ourselves with the best of intentions but never truly used. Let's talk about those next. Finally, let's talk about the items you brought home with hope, but never really used. There was a time when I believed that buying the right things would magically make me become the person I wanted to be. The organized version of me, the healthy version, the I bake on weekends and label everything version. So I bought tools, containers, specialty gadgets, and they sat there, brand new, quietly reminding me of who I meant to become but hadn't. The truth is, we don't buy our way into new habits. And holding on to unused stuff doesn't bring us closer to the life we imagined, it just clutters the life we actually have. For example, I once bought a full set of cake decorating supplies after watching a few baking tutorials online. I imagined birthdays with homemade tiered cakes and elegant piping. But in reality, I don't enjoy baking. I like simple muffins and store-bought cupcakes. That box stayed untouched for over a year before I admitted the truth. I didn't need cake tools. I needed more shelf space. So now I ask myself this one question when I see something I haven't touched. If I had the time and energy tomorrow, would I actually use this, or do I just wish I were the kind of person who would letting go of these items isn't a failure. It's a kind of self-trust. The decision to stop holding on to maybe someday and start honoring who you actually are right now. And when you do that, your space begins to reflect your real life, not a wish list version of it. Now that we've gone through all 10 kinds of items that quietly take up space, let's wrap this up and bring it home. That's it, 10 quiet shifts that help me keep our home lighter without chasing perfection or doing everything at once. If you're craving more ease and less chaos at home, try just one of these. One small release can create more space than you think. I also have a video where I walk through how I declutter by zone kitchen closet, even the hidden spots. It pairs beautifully with this one. And if today's video gave you a little more breathing room, feel free to like, share, or subscribe. You deserve a home that gives back more than it takes. And if you've ever looked around your home and felt like something's off, but you couldn't quite name it, tomorrow's video might be the missing piece. I'll be sharing a few small, overlooked things that quietly make your space feel heavier, more cluttered, or less calm than it really is. It's the kind of reset you didn't know you needed, and I hope you'll be here for it.